Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Brooklyn-based jazz pianist and composer Dana Saul. We caught up with him in late April 2020 during the beginnings of the COVID-19 quarantine lockdown to discuss the release of his recent album called Ceiling and about his life well lived in music. Get to know him and enjoy.
It goes without saying that these are very extraordinary times, so thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
I'm glad to do it.
So let's talk a little bit about what it's like. You had a CD that came out last year, Ceiling. What is it like to have music out during this time of quarantine? I mean, do you see it as an opportunity for people to have more latitude to be able to listen to music? How do you view that?
I hadn't thought of it. Things didn't change for me much before and after quarantine. Some of the press stuff had died down a little bit, and hearing from people who were listening also. So I'm just glad I actually got a project out, and I'm not having to adjust to some new post-quarantine process of either making or releasing a project. Be it if I was relying on a gig that would bolster the work, and the publicity, all that stuff is just in the past for me for the moment. So it's hard for me to say. I expect that one day there'll be recording studios will be open again, and I'm not racing to put out to really adjust my own practice in music to adapt yet, but we'll see how long the new normal is what it is,
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get to the beginnings of these jazz beats for you. Where were you born and raised, and kind of how did jazz become a part of your life?
I grew up in Plattsburgh, New York, and then moved to rural Maine in the middle of high school. I started playing the piano when I was 7 years old and was always interested in improvising. So I had some good instruction on and off over the years. There was not a lot of people around, but I attended some programs and got a little better and had some supportive band directors in Plattsburgh and in Maine. And some of the most important instruction I received was from a guy called Steve Grover in Maine, who's like a legendary figure in the Maine jazz scene. He was actually a drummer, but he was a good piano player too. He was a really important mentor to me and to virtually everyone who came out of Maine. So I maybe jumped forward a little bit there, but that's my most prominent, important influence in a person, and I'm really grateful for every sort of mentor who showed me the ropes or showed me how things work. And I got into, I didn't become like a serious jazz listener probably till later in middle school and high school. Just when I got into Miles Davis, wanted to get into every angle of that. The things started rolling and it's all tumbling along, and you just got to keep going, and you keep that curiosity, flowing.
Yeah, without a doubt. So what was the first live jazz show you saw that really, really inspired you or made you think, man, that's something I want to do?
It was actually it was a Maria Schneider concert at the Flynn Theater. Her orchestra, I was so moved by that. That was the Flynn Theater in Burlington. And then I'd never heard music like that, and I was really inspired. And I think then, like a month or two later, I got to hear Jim McNeely. So this was like two large ensembles, totally different aesthetics, but and these groups. I mean, it was her group that was touring, but then when McNeely, it was a mix of local musicians whom I knew as even when I was young, and probably some ringers at the time, maybe some university students. These are really captivating to me and really inspired me to want to compose seriously and devote myself to the music. And any other interests or potential thoughts of what I would do with my life sort of went to the wayside around that time, I remember.
So when you did start playing professionally, what was that like? Do you feel natural on stage? Do you get nervous? How does that feel to you?
I don't think of myself as like a natural performer. I used to give these they had a nice piano at the local library in Damerscott, Maine, and I was really tucked away and got almost no use until I said, "Hey, can I play a concert here on that piano?" One of these concerts, I actually fainted early on. We were playing the song Joshua, which is like a tricky form. It's a Miles Davis song. And it was not going well. He was playing drums, and this guy Fitz Jenkins is a phenomenal bass player, low key in Maine, who he was on. We were playing trio. We played this. It didn't go right. I think I was about 18, and it was a packed audience, and I knew I had to pause the show because I was having low blood sugar or something, and I walked into a wall and fell on the ground in front of all these people. It was like a bad dream. It was around that time that I think I was wanting to transfer to studying composition, classical, when I was in college. So I remember thinking at that time, like, maybe I'm going to be a composer because, like, look at what I'm going through right now. So I'm always, I wouldn't say I'm a natural on stage. It's something I work on, and it's just part of the things I have to work through. And as I'm hoping that, having more and more experience will some of those issues will wither away. That's what I've been told, and that's what I'm kind of feeling internally and expecting.
Early gigs for you, like how did things kind of start taking off in that direction where you got more and more gigs?
I was playing when I was like most people who become serious. I think I was playing gigs when I was a teenager. I mean, one of my closest friends and collaborators is the drummer Matt Honor, and we were kind of neighbor. We became friends when we were about 12, and so we learned to play together. He's actually in my group, so it's been an amazing journey on and on, as we went our separate ways and reconvened years later, and we now live together actually. So we played gigs together at restaurants and at cafes in Plattsburgh, New York. I thought I was hot stuff, and I probably didn't know how little I actually knew about how to play, which is good, which is useful for coming up. But I just remember playing at some restaurants, and I don't know. I've never been inundated with performance opportunities at any phase in my development. These are invaluable experiences, and it's so distant now in my memory. I mean, I played some gigs in Maine too, but I was always more about setting up concerts where I would prepare to play standard solo piano, or I started doing improvisations. That's when I was about 18. When I got into improvising freely and performing it, and trying to play the piano really well. Yeah, I think growing up in small towns, the kind of opportunities to play out as a young person that are available to students who come up in cities like probably Kansas City and Washington, D.C. It's not the same situation. They're not really clubs. So most of my work was kind of an inward, process.
Yeah. Yeah.
Most of my growth and development.
What do you like best about being a musician?
That it's continuous. It's like a continuum of growth and development that goes on your whole life until you can't play your instrument anymore, God forbid. So I always feel grateful that I'm not a ballet dancer, where their careers sort of end as they approach 30. So I like that, and I think of playing and composing as the ultimate sort of self-reflective process to learn about your inner life, and in relation to the history and the tradition, and as like something I love and I'm close to. So it's the art form for me, and just being able to be creative as my job, as it were, although it doesn't pay anything really. That's what I love the most, and playing with people too, and the social aspect of meeting people and making music with people and growing through that.
On the heels of that, why do you love jazz?
I don't know why. Because it's great. It's a unique kind of music. The relation to its own history is the one constant, and it's a deep and fascinating history.
Yeah.
That I couldn't do justice to in this context, and I don't know. I just love the music. I mean, I've always been obsessed with the history of it, and it's constantly evolving, and it's a good balance of demanding the utmost musicianship in the traditional sense, and also freedom. That's what I'd say.
Right on.
You have to you have to constantly work and keep yourself up and learn to play your instrument in the way that classical musicians do, and then you have to tap into your instincts and intuition in order to really perform and be artistic. So
cool.
I like that paradox.
Yeah. So we're in a very unique time in our lives where the live jazz is gone, and it's going to come back, though. And my question is, what do you hope both the audience and the musician realizes during this time away from the live jazz when we get back that might be revelatory or, enlightening?
I suppose that the arts are a precious part of society, and I fear that society will adapt to a world without live performance, and then it won't come back in the same way. I hope that doesn't happen. It's hard to say. I mean, real jazz fans will come back and flood the clubs. Music will always find a way,
Yeah, I agree. So, final question to you is this: everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, that you're living your life. Who do you think you are?
I'm still figuring that out. I have my own ideas about what I want to do in music, and I work on these things every day. I still have a lot to learn and a lot to discover. I have no idea. I'm a pretty introverted person, and I've not been like on the scene as heavily in the last few years as I've been working jobs to pay my rent. So it's kind of become a more inward thing for me. I think I'm someone with something to say in music, and with respect to alleged fans or I'm not really. I'm grateful for everyone who reaches out and comes to see me play, but I do this for myself. It's the only thing I'm really deeply good at, and but I still have so much work to do on myself. So that's gonna be true even when we lift quarantine, and I'm still figuring out who I am. I still feel very young, and so much room to grow.
Hey, man, thank you for taking a minute out today to talk with me about your music and the world we're living in. I really appreciate it.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening and tuning into another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in Brooklyn, Maine, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Dana for his time, music, and stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com for everything Neon Jazz all the time. Go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.